Between the existence of giants, No Sun to Worship is a feature-length experience that incites hope in an otherwise bleak scenario, both in its fiction and to the ghost of its genre. If you have even the slightest interest in tactical espionage action, do yourself a favor and go play this right now. No Sun to Worship is the next step on a steady evolution by solo developer António Freire, whose works often harken back to when the game industry was rapidly growing, with the experimental genres being brought forward by the latest 3D and CD-based technology. With a quick glance, you can instantly recognize how the original Metal Gear Solid seems to quantify as the majority of the inspiration for Mr. Antonio's games. A sentiment that I can easily understand, but that has been gradually lost to the majority of the people as the time goes on. An ever-growing type of you had to be there scenario, where each leap in technology was nothing short of astounding when considering the initial short gap from 2D into full-blown 3D in the home space. Powered by the Unreal Engine, the low-resolution look is elevated by its modern light render, creating these visually striking environments that highlight the protagonist's otherwise dark silhouette. Dynamic glow of the lights then breathe life onto the otherwise cold and inhospitable facilities, covered in overgrown technology, with each array of ominous light and every room filled with dangling cables, filling you with a sense of dread that is always ever present. The subtle use of dithering is also put to great use here, with shadows being rendered with this classic trick, which is also applied to the protagonist, as to not obscure the view while keeping up with the rest of the art direction. All of this, together with a minimalist audio approach, creates a gorgeous world that, despite its oppressive nature, asks to be carefully explored, while you are constantly surrounded by a sense of danger that will only ever leave you when you exit the game. While the base inspirations are loud and clear to anyone who shows enough interest to get to this point, I like to believe that some additional titles contributed to the conception of No Sun to Worship. Games like Siphon Filter and Splinter Cell. And while it might seem like a stretch, I can also see a lot of Rengoku in this game, that one forgotten duology on PlayStation Portable, with its violent action steered by lifeless metallic frames. The nameless protagonist also reminds me of the Sand Wraith from Prince of Persia: Warrior Within, not just by its similar imposing appearance, but also the shared concept of an agent of chaos, born out of its own punishment. There is in fact a lot of Metal Gear in here, but the visual similarities are mostly a trick until you realize that the gameplay leans more heavily on its later entries, with the enemy tagging and hold-up systems being closer to Peace Walker than the original Metal Gear Solid. This can also be felt by the lack of any sort of Soliton radar, or being able to knock on walls to trick nearby guards. In the end, I see this sort of game being somehow closer to a PlayStation Portable release than something from the original PlayStation. As for another specific feeling, this type of feature-length experience also reminds me of the old PlayStation demo discs, with each available showcase contained within, leaving you with a sense of wonder as to what each full game might expand into. For the last time, if you are interested in No Sun to Worship, I recommend you leave for now and play it for yourself. I don't usually bring this sort of key point when recommending a game, but this is neither expensive or too long, so there is no excuse to go play this right this moment. As for a deeper dive, while motive and reasoning are kept ambiguous, the environment storytelling is what carries the few traces of story present. You're a nameless protagonist, with the sole purpose of punishing others. Of why or what is not important. On each unique mission, there are specific targets that you're forced to punish, and you can only leave through the marked exit when the job is done. Each area is filled with several guards that will cross paths with you while patrolling, always with a keen sense of vision and a focused sense of hearing, and I can safely confirm that there are not enough bullets in the world to solve all of your problems. As for the main loadout, you have two guns, one being a silenced pistol, which is the one you are going to use most of the time, and an automatic rifle, for when you fuck up. Ammunition is scarce and can rarely be found throughout the mission, with the additional caveat of reloading causing the leftover bullets to be forever lost. Luckily, you can pull a stealth kill when you are beyond your target, so technically you don't have to fire a single bullet throughout the entire game. Clearly inspired by Splinter Cell, one of the greats in the stealth genre to this day, we have the comeback of movement speed being adjusted by the mouse wheel. While I personally prefer the keyboard and mouse combo for this sort of shooting action, playing with the controller also feels great, as you got the necessary precise motions with the help of the analog sticks. Still, in a world mostly comprised out of metal, you possess the ability to move in complete silence, which drains your health as long as it is active. The counterpart is how you can absorb corpses to recover health, with each type providing different amounts. This is double useful as you can quickly dispose of bodies without alerting other guards and proceed through like you're never there to begin with. For the masochists, the additional hard mode difficulty exchanges all of the normal enemies to their armored counterparts, removing the ability to dispatch anyone with just headshots, while also hiding the waypoints for your objectives. I can guarantee you that no game this year had me clench this hard with how tense some of the sections can turn out to be when you are one target away, no handgun bullets, and surrounded by an entire platoon of enemies with patrol routes that don't leave much room to maneuver. I've tried ghosting a few missions, but the level design, especially in hard mode, really doesn't favor the player with that sort of playstyle. There are also some other problems, but nothing that a bit of polish couldn't fix. Stuff like how the camera can get stuck on a more complex geometry, or how you can't traverse through a door while aiming because your extending arms get in the way. Enemy movement is also prone to these sudden jerking motions, which means they can turn fast enough to jump into alert, but this is something I only noticed on hard mode, so maybe it's not a bug, but a feature. I would also like an option to change the shoulder of the camera without aiming. There were times where I had to aim for a split second just to change the position of the camera to better align my point of view to the level layout. In the end, it's mostly problems that can easily be ignored without ruining the overall experience. Knowing the developer's working philosophy, I'm not expecting some sort of sequel, but I would be pleased if No Sun to Worship could be put under an extra coat of polish. Personally, I think this one deserves it. Nevertheless, if this is at least a step onto bigger and better projects, then I am looking forward to the future.